Hi everyone, and welcome back. So we're gonna wrap this video series with this last component of our architecture, where we are extracting the information from the image and we are storing that information into the DynamoDB. So a quick introduction about DynamoDB. DynamoDB allow us to store the information in the unstructured format, because generally if you have the concept of the databases, in the database we store the data in the structured format, and that includes like the arrangement of the data into the rows and columns. But with the NoSQL or unstructured data, the concept is that you will store the information on the table, which allow the unstructured component of the data as well. Right, so we were gonna see how that works. It's very powerful technology. Either you are using the AWS DynamoDB or Cosmos DB from Azure side, both allow you to create the data using the non-structured non-structured paradigm, right? So what we're gonna do first, let's have a look. Let's create the DynamoDB table, which gonna contain that information. And why I'm picking up the unstructured data set, you're going to find that the reason very soon, right? Because the image that we are getting, it might be our table structure is going to be different. We might have more and more fields, and in order to accommodate with the backend data storage, it's going to be challenging if we use the structure format, because structure you have a predefined schema that has to be comply with the incoming the data, right? But with the unstructured or no SQL data basis, you don't need to be restricted to the defined schema. If even your data set which is coming with additional attributes, the table is going to accommodate that automatically, which is really a powerful concept, tell you the truth. And obviously it poses its own challenges while you're traversing or extracting data for further analysis, but that's a side topic not included in today's discussion. So what I'll do, so you can see I have updated the architecture, and now in this architecture, instead of storing the information on the S3 bucket, we are going to extract the information through the Lambda function, and then we'll store that information into DynamoDB table, right? So let's jump back into our AWS environment, and you can see I'm in the DynamoDB. By the way, if you want to search your DynamoDB service, you can just type Dynamo, and it will bring the DynamoDB in here, and you can see manage NoSQL database, right? And NoSQL is not only SQL, but SQL is involved everywhere, so you cannot get rid of SQL, but that is more like unstructured. That's why I'm using the word unstructured instead of SQL or NoSQL, right? Because that's more easily to understand. So I've already opened the service panel, and you can see if you go to the dashboard, in dashboard you're gonna see we have the DEX cluster. We'll discuss in a separate video. We have some alarms which we can which we can also see in the CloudWatch, because CloudWatch is central to all the services. It captures all the information for whatever is happening in any service in AWS, right? So CloudWatch footprint you're gonna see across all the services in AWS, which is good. Like at least we know all the action has been logged somewhere. So if something goes wrong or things are not happening according to the expectation, we know where we need to go and find out the reasons or evidence. So let me hit tables. And table, like I mentioned, is the main structure that contain our data, right? So what I'm going to do, let me create a table, and that's how simple it is. So I'll give the table a name. Let me just copy, because I've already created the table in the previous exercise. So I'm just calling it TBL order line items, because that's what I'm trying to extract. So if I just go back in here, so you can see I'm extracting the orders for the employee, and these orders are more like the line items on the order invoice, right? So that's why I'm just giving it a logical name, so it's easy to understand. Alrighty. So and then the partition. The only thing you need to provide for the DynamoDB table is the partition key, because that will help to partition the data, and that's where the whole performance capabilities exist. That based on the partition key, the more accurate your partition key, it's going to be more efficient while you are retrieving the data, because that will nicely partition your data. And once you submit a query to extract that data, based on the partition key, know which area it needs to scan to extract the data from the DynamoDB table, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the employee order ID as a partition key. Right now, I'm just using it for as a random key. I'm not going to go towards the best practices, which key we should use. But generally, there are keys which can nicely partition your data. That key is the best candidate for the partition key, right? Which is not the topic for this video. We are just trying to extract the data and store it in here. Sort key is optional. If you want to sort the data based on a particular key, we can mention, but I'm going to skip in this case. I'm gonna keep the default setting. Provision read capacity and provision write capacity is going to be 5, which is suffice for this work, right? And I'm going to use the provision capacity mode instead of on demand. DynamoDB standard, I'm going to use the default class, which is provided by AWS. And I'm not going to add any tag at the moment, so let me just hit create table. Now, if you look in here, it is creating a table, and my table only have one attribute, right? But if for somehow I have closed the image, but what I'm gonna do, I'll just jump back on the image on the slide. I'm gonna show you the information we are extracting is more than one field. So that's where you're gonna see the full power of the DynamoDB. That current schema of the DynamoDB table is only based on one attribute, which is obviously the partition key, right? But once we insert the data, we have the capability to define new attributes and insert the data, right? So it's more like the schema-less entry into the DynamoDB table, and then our DynamoDB will adjust automatically. All right, so that's pretty much from the DynamoDB side. We have already created a table. And one thing I just want to show you in here what I did, because we don't normally hard code stuff into our Lambda function. So what I did, let me just increase the resolution so you guys can see easily. Because we don't where is the, I think I have to, yeah. All right, so that's much better. Generally, we want hard code stuff into the Lambda function. So you can see if we need to pass the table name or the key name, because we're gonna use these we're gonna use them once we insert the data into DynamoDB table. So there are two ways. One, I can hard code the value in here, but that's not the good practice, because every time you come in and you change the table name, or if the key has changed, you have to change the Lambda code and redeploy it, right? So the other way to do that we define the environment variable, and we provide the values in the environment variable, because that will lock our Lambda code, and it's gonna read dynamically from the environment variable. And by the way, these variables we can change without touching the code in the Lambda function, right? So you can see I've already defined two environment variable. One is DynamoDB table name, which is the table I've just created, and second one is the table key column, which is the partition key. Like I mentioned, we need these two minimum to create the DynamoDB table. So I have created both, and you can see I've already provided both as part of the environment variable. Now I can read them in the code, and I'm gonna show you the command is pretty simple. We need to import the OS library, which allow us to read the environment variable during runtime in the Python code. And you can see in here what I'm doing. Now let me just open, because we can start. So that if you want to work with DynamoDB, guess what? We need to create an object on the DynamoDB service, and you can see both of three. We are already using it, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna actually call the resource method, and in that we're gonna provide the service which we are going to use, and that will return us the object that will help us to interact with the AWS service using that object, right? So I've already created an object called DynamoDB for interacting with the AWS DynamoDB service. I'm going to read the name, and you can see os.environment.get, and through that I can read the environment variable, and you can see in here I have provided the variable name or key name that I've defined under the environment variable section. So in the configuration, you can see I have, well, let me quickly show you. So you can define as many variables as you can, and that will control the dynamic behavior of our code, right? So at the moment, I have DynamoDB table name, which is referring to this, and table key column, right? So let me quickly go back. The DynamoDB table name, that's going to read the value of this key and store it into table name. And under the key column name, I'm going to read the table key column name. I'm going to store it in the local variable, right? So these two are the first step that I have to put in my Lambda code if you want to interact with the AWS DynamoDB, right? So let's deploy that. Hopefully it won't create any error. Right. As a second step, what I'm gonna do, obviously, in the previous episode, if you remember, just take this success message out. Okay, that's much better. So we finished up to here. We were extracting the tables from the images, and at the moment we were storing that information with rest of the extraction that include the metadata and many other information bits as part of the extraction into the JSON format, right? But what we are interested at this stage is only the tabular part, which is the right side of the image, right? So let me see if I can bring that image on the screen for you guys. All right, so that's the image we were talking. We have already loaded into S3 bucket, and that's the information we are talking to extract it, right? So in the last video, we have successfully extracted all the information, including the table, and we explicitly mentioned that we are only interested in the table. And if you remember, in the last video, we extracted the table information, but I mentioned as well that because this looks like table as well, so that will also coming as a table in the extraction as well, right? So we have many ways that we can use to exclude that, but at the moment I'm only focusing on the right hand side. All right, so in this case, I think now we have the image on screen. That's much better. We're gonna see how we can capture that information only in a structure that can be maybe in the header and the respective value. And then we can pass the header and the respective values to convert into JSON, and then add it into our DynamoDB table, right? So the very first thing to capture the header and the row, right? So in order to do it, let me just quickly jump back on to my table. So what I did, I had defined two lists. One is the header list, and you can see that's going to capture the data header for me, right? And the second one one is the item data, which is going to excuse me, contain the data which I'm extracting as part of the row under the table, right? And and I have defined this list in the under the row, because after each row it's going to be reset, because every row is going to be different from the previous row, right? So that's why we have a different position for these two variables, right? And the work is pretty simple. uh I need to check the index of the row. If the index row is 0, that means we are extracting the header row. And if it is not 0, that means we are extracting the data rows, right? That's what we are seeing in the image, right? The first row is always referred to the header, and the rest of the rows are referring to the to the data set, right? So that's fine. Now what we're gonna do, so you can see the only thing we know that in the cell we have the text field which return us the text that has been extracted, and I'm using the strip function because once we extract the text, it's actually extract the leading or trailing spaces beside the text that I want to remove before I can store it into my list, right? Just from the cleaning perspective, right? So very simple concept. Two lists. One is going to contain the header, and that header needs to be extracted once, because the first row is going to process one, and then we have the item data that is going to be extracted as long as we have the rows available in the table, right? So let's hit test to see if we are able to see all the row information beside the header information on our screen. And by the way, once I extract, I print both lists. So you're gonna see now. So that's my first run, and it's only printing the header row, because once the row is index is 0, that means only the header row is coming, right? So the data row is going to be empty. But in the second pass, we have the data row as well as we have the header row as well as the data row, right? And then it will continue all the way till the last row, right? Because the header row will not change, but every time data row will change. So that's a simple concept. So that's how we have put the environment together now to store the data information which we have extracted from the environment back into the DynamoDB table. So in this video, we created the DynamoDB table. We prepare our Lambda function with the basic, I would say, the concept, like we define the variable that's going to contain the DynamoDB table and the key partition key information. And we have also start putting the row in a format that we can later process to create the data for inserting into DynamoDB table. So I believe it will be helpful. You understand the concept. Please, if you don't understand this Lambda function, watch the previous video. I'm gonna put the link in the description, so you guys can watch the previous video, which are the prereq to understand how the whole solution is working. And if you have any question, reach out, put the comments, happy to answer. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'm gonna see you in the next video.